Hi everyone, it's Maria. Welcome to my channel. If you are new, thanks for joining me. I just realized I am one subscriber away from 400, which just boggles my mind because half the time I just feel like I'm rambling on and I don't know what I'm saying either. This is one of those times. So if you've been with me a long time, I really appreciate it because it's been fun being in community with you guys. So that said, I'm going to jump right in with my May part 2 wrap up. Yeah, May was a rough month for me. April, May, I just feel like, I was hanging on by the skin of my teeth, not only with parenting, but trying to finish up some homeschool things that I wanted to do. And then I got in a car accident last week, which was awful, and I'm still amazed that everybody's fine. Yeah, it's just been one of those months where you just keep, eventually I just started laughing because you're just kind of like, it can't keep going like this, and it did, but that is over. June is here and I am leaning hard into summer. So that said, I will go ahead and jump right in with the second part of my May. You can look at my first part if you would like. I will try and remember to link that below, but if I don't, go ahead and do that. First up is There Goes the Neighborhood by Ali Noorani. This is the subtitle, How Communities Overcome Prejudice and Meet the Challenge of American Immigration. I thought it was a pretty good book, pretty solid, very fast read. For me personally, I have some family member experience with this. I've seen a lot of the prejudice behind immigration, so I didn't necessarily need the personal gut-wrenching narratives to drive home the point for me. I did really appreciate his arguments for why immigration is good for our economy, because I feel like a lot of people don't realize that. I also appreciated how he has pretty solid statistics as to why it would be very bad for our economy, just from a numbers standpoint, if immigrants did go back or stop coming or whatever. He talks about some of the myths of people have about immigration currently. For instance, the immigration rate's actually been going down, not just since Trump's been elected, but also before that. And they contribute a lot in taxes. There are a lot of things in here that I think were very well debunked if you are unfamiliar with the immigrant experience and some of the issues there. So I really, really recommend this especially if you find yourself very unfamiliar. And he also talks about what communities can do to kind of help support immigration and immigrants, as well as trying to make the transition easier. Yeah, so good book. Second book was Women's History for Beginners by Bonnie J. Morris. And this book surprised me because it looks like, first of all, it's very short for global history on women's history. I think it should be a lot thicker than this. But it was very engaging, very quick read, and it made me want to research so many more places and people and times. Also, I had very low expectations because the clip art in here looks like 90s, early thousands clip art, which just kind of sent me in flashback mode of my school days. Yeah, like some of these, pretty great. But the things that she covers in here, she talks a lot about why it's been a struggle to have people include women's history as part of history, why that shouldn't be the case at all. There's so much rich information out there. She talks about lots of different people in history across the globe that I hadn't been familiar with, especially, I knew some African people, but I didn't know as many Asian. I mean, she definitely covers the gamut. She talks about some of the struggles that women had. Another thing that I thought was really interesting is she proposes and speculates that because women had the role of cooking and taking care of the kitchen, and they had so many dietary restrictions because of religion, a lot of women did not intermingle with people that thought differently than them because they had those dietary restrictions. They had to keep kosher, or they had to be vegetarian, those kinds of things. And so I thought that was very interesting because if there were more intermingling of women, perhaps there wouldn't be as much war. She talks about how women work so hard to bring life into the world, they would probably think twice before extinguishing it. I just thought that was really kind of an interesting take on it, and made me speculate a lot more. What if women were in charge? Would there be a lot less bloodshed. So anyway, I liked it. I think I gave it 4 stars, maybe more, but yeah, it was a good read and very quick. Next up, Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. This is my 3rd Agatha Christie that I've read, and so far she has shocked me each time. So that's a good record for a mystery writer. I'm excited about watching this in the fall, and I think I just probably will like watching Agatha Christie more than I will like reading her. And I don't know what that is. I feel the same way about Pride and Prejudice. I like the characters in here. Again, I was surprised at the ending. I thought it was very different. Makes you wonder like how her brain ticked. I do know that Dan Stevens, who was Matthew on Downton Abbey and who was the Beast in the newest live action Beauty and the Beast, does the Audible version of this. So if you are an audio listener, I would definitely probably pick that up. I didn't find out until I was halfway through the book, and I didn't want to go back and forth. So there you go. Next up is it's historical fiction. It's Mrs. Lincoln's Dressmaker by Jennifer Chiaverini or Chiaverini. I'm not quite sure. I guess she's the author of Mrs. Lincoln's Rival as well. This book I've had on my shelf for a while. My mom got it for me because she knows I love Lincoln, and I'm trying to read more Lincoln. This year is one of my goals. So yes, it was interesting. Okay, so it was very well researched. It was based mainly on the memoir by Elizabeth Keckley, who is the African-American woman who had started off life as a slave and bought her freedom, and then worked her way up into having a very prominent dressmaking business in D.C. Right around the time, right before the Civil War, while Lincoln was in office, and slightly thereafter. So it kind of chronicles her life from right before the Civil War, a couple of years up until, well, it goes up to her death, I think. So, things I really loved about this book, she brought history alive pretty well. I always love reading historical fiction when you know what's going to happen to the historical characters. For instance, The Ball, where one of their sons was sick. I knew he was going to die, and so you're kind of watching that happen, knowing going in how it's going to play out. Obviously, when she's getting ready for a night at the theater and Mary Todd says she has a headache and she's wondering if she should go, you kind of then think, what if she hadn't gone? There were several instances in here where I was familiar with the history behind it and was interested to see a different point of view. So that was good. Another thing that I thought was really well done was I didn't realize how, I always like it when you are reading historical fiction about famous people and you don't see them as flat people on a picture. And she did that a great job. Apparently, again, as I said before, Mrs. Keckley made dresses for Mrs. Davis as well, who later becomes the president of the Confederacy, well, president's wife of the Confederacy, the first lady. And I thought that was interesting to kind of show the difference between Mary Todd and Mrs. Davis, and I cannot remember her first name for the life of me right now. So that was cool. They also talk about Johnson after Lincoln was shot and kind of some of the character blemishes that she saw in him, as well as some of his family, which was interesting. You kind of see like the internal DC grudges. I can imagine this playing off as being a very good political memoir now. Yeah, Elizabeth Keckley would have done great in today's media with some of the things going on. So that was cool. The thing that I wish was different was the author is a white woman. And I always try and read books that have a protagonist of the same race as the person that is featured. So I would have loved if this was written by African American instead, just because I think sometimes our whiteness, we want to see our white heroes as unblemished. And while she does show some problems that abolitionists had with Lincoln and some of the things that he was saying that were not so great, I would have liked to really make sure that Mrs. Keckley, at least through most of the book, reveres Abraham Lincoln as the great emancipator. And I really wanted to know if that was for real. And I think it probably was, because it was well researched, but I will probably do some background research myself to check. So, good book. Yes, especially if you are into Civil War, Abraham Lincoln. it covers those. Elizabeth Keckley lost a son in the Civil War, so she kind of talks a little bit about her own experience as a mother who's experienced loss. The real Mrs. Keckley really did. I mean, she was Mary Todd's confidant, and so you do see a lot of that. I also didn't realize the controversy behind the original memoir publication by Keckley. She apparently did not agree with some of the things the publisher included, which of course pissed off Mary Todd, who is pretty easy to piss off anyway. So yeah, it was very well done. Next up, I'm actually going to tell you this one. Another controversial book. This is The Benedict Option, A Strategy for Christians in a Post-Christian Nation by Rod Dreher. I included this in my library haul video, so if you watch that, you'll know that I picked this up. I listened to an interview on NPR with Rod Dreher, and I was really sure that I disagreed with a lot that he was going to say. So I'm trying to not just retreat into my echo chamber of people who think like me, and I wanted to read this to see for myself. And it surprised me. I agreed with some of what he said, so that was good. First up, he is very much, Rod Dreher, of the mindset that marriage is between a man and a woman, and that's it, period. If you are LGBTQ, he feels you should be celibate. According to the book, he encourages communities not to oust you or to physically harm you, but he does not feel that you should be supported in your relationship as a LGBTQ person, which I have a big problem with. But I was glad, I guess, that he wasn't saying that they were, I don't know. He didn't use the word abomination, which at least I guess I'll give him that. Yes, but that was a big problem I had. A couple other things that I thought were interesting. He did say that while Trump is a person who Christians, seem to be excited about because he will, support the pro-life movement, and he will, support judges that maybe agree with some of those things. He says that Donald Trump does not have a history of telling the truth, which I thought, honestly, for some conservatives to say is a big thing right now, because it seems like I'm still hearing that he's all chocolate and roses. So that was kind of an interesting thing. I didn't expect that he would say that about Trump. He did also say that sex education should be done by parents, which I agreed with. Parents should do some sex education. I don't think they should be the only people talking about it, but I think if you're a smart parent, it's a good idea to open up those channels of communication, because at least they're getting good information. So there was that. I don't know about what kind of education we probably wouldn't agree on, but I'm trying to look for common ground. Another thing that he said in here, he has a very, very bleak view of the future. He's pretty sure that society is going down the tubes, and unless Christians do what he is proposing of getting in their communities and educating themselves about their faith and what he says the Bible says, etc., they will not be able to help society when it crumbles, is kind of what his arguments were. That is where we diverge. He does say in here, which I wasn't clear on from the interview, that he expects people to... I thought from the interview he would just want to segregate and not have anything to do with people who did not think like him. He specifically says in here that if parents forbid or shelter their children from certain mindsets, those children are very likely to go and rebel, which is totally true. Like, as soon as you tell a kid something, that they're going to go in the opposite direction. So he seemed in the book to suggest that you don't want to just cut yourselves off. It seemed like he was just saying you should be with people in community who are like-minded. where I have a problem is I don't think society will fall apart if you don't. Yeah. Other things he proposes that I agreed with. He talks about taking a rest from technology. I think that's just smart in general for creativity purposes. It's good to have breaks. It's good to unwind and not just get in your echo chambers. I think it's good to be out in nature and to be part of art and community and giving back to people. So that was good. He's a very big proponent for homeschooling, which of course I like homeschooling. I'm a homeschooler myself. But homeschooling is not for everyone, and I do not do it to shelter my children. I do it to show them lots of different ways to live and to learn and to be and to travel more. That is not why he's proposing homeschooling. He's proposing homeschooling because he thinks the public schools will ruin and corrupt your children. I don't like that. He does suggest that if you cannot afford to homeschool or have the capabilities of doing it, that you should find a classical education facility for your children that is Christian. And again, I like classical education. My husband and I lean in that direction. He leans probably more than I do for homeschool purposes, but that is not why there were so many little things in here that I really liked. Like, I think it's important to know about the history of Western civilization. And I think it's important to know where Western thought came from and how it's developed. And I think it's important as a person of faith to explain to my children why I think the way they do. That's where I can agree. I have a hard time by saying this is the way everybody needs to do something. And I definitely think, it made me very frustrated to think someone just wanted to cut themselves off because they viewed everything as bad. So yeah, this was a very strange read for me. I'm glad I did it because, again, I'm trying to not burrow up in my echo chamber. I would encourage you to find another author that you know you're probably going to disagree with and stretch yourself a little bit. It's okay. I remember feeling like when I was in more conservative circles that they are very much encouraging you not to read certain things. I mean, there was the whole don't read Harry Potter or don't do this. And I think you do yourself such a disservice when you only read things that you think are already things you think. That's not how life is supposed to be at all. And I just, yeah. The world will not end if you read something that is not something you agree with. And I really love Harry Potter now, so whatever. Anyway, that was a long rant. Sorry. I had a lot of thoughts. This last one, I think, I already did a gush video about, so I will link that below. But this is Oil and Marble by Stephanie Story. Very well done historical fiction on Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. I won't say more than that because you can watch my gush video, but I really enjoyed it. And I think I gave it 5 stars because, yeah, I did. Because I'm going to reread this and I loved it. And it made me happy. So that's what I finished. Currently, I am reading How to Talk So Little Kids Will Listen, a survival guide to life with children ages 2 to 7. It's by Joanna Faber and Julie King. This is part of a series. This is their little kid version of that, but I'm getting some really good stuff from here that I have tried out and it has worked. Now, I won't say it's worked on the first time for everything, so I've had to try a couple different techniques. My middle child and my youngest, my eldest is not doing so awfully right now, but my middle child, my little one, yes. So I'm very thankful for this book right now. And I'm also had just started Cold Mountain, which I know some people are very excited about. So anyway, I will be working on that. And I think it'll be kind of a cool follow-up to Mrs. Lincoln's Dressmaker. So that is my part 2 May wrap-up. What are you guys reading? What have you liked? Have you read any of these? Yeah. Was your May awful? Was it great? I would love to hear if it was great. Tell me if it was awesome. Anyway, I'm really excited to have June. I hope you are too. I will talk to you all later. Bye.